Welcome to the FASA Leadership Lounge, where we are excited to discuss various policies impacting Florida school leaders. I am Michelle White, Executive Director of the Florida Association of School Administrators.
And I'm Jessica Janasiewicz, and I serve as a lobbyist for FASA and a number of school districts in Florida.
Jessica, I think this week we should start by saying that we are recording this episode on Friday afternoon,
Mhm.
May 2nd. Session is still happening. Bills are currently being volleyed back and forth amongst the chambers, with many education bills still outstanding. As a result, there's a lot in play, and we may be going late into the night tonight.
Absolutely. One thing we do know is that there will be no budget when the legislature's work is completed this week. Um, there has been a lot of infighting. There's been a lot of disagreements among the chambers, and they were not able to reach a resolution about the allocations, which is the just the very beginning part of the budgetary process. So earlier this week, the Senate President and the House Speaker both let their chambers know that we were not going to have a budget this week and that we would either going to be extending the legislative session or coming back for a special session. We were then told a couple days later that they did not need to worry about being in Tallahassee this coming weekend or the next week. The primary reason for that is it is FSU's graduation here in Tallahassee, and all the hotel rooms are taken by
Go Knowles!
Go Knowles, my parents who are coming to see their students graduate. So we know that the earliest that they would be able to come back would be that following week. Now, the there is a difference between extending the session and having a special session. If they were to extend, that doesn't mean they have to immediately come right back. They could recess and agree to come back sometime later in May, whenever they chose to do. But if they extend, any policies that are still outstanding remain outstanding. So it basically just means we're continuing the clock on the legislative session. If they sine die some point tonight and decide to come back for a special session, then that anything that will be included in the call will be the only things that are up for debate. So obviously the budget would definitely be one of them. We know they have to do that. But if the presiding officers decide that they want to include some other policy issues as part of that call for a special session, they could do that as well. The important thing to note is all of this has to be done before the end of June because the fiscal year ends at the end of June, and we would run out of money to pay our bills in the state of Florida. So we know that they will get it done before then.
That is a great update and something to definitely keep in mind. The budget is still being in play can, in one sense, be an opportunity for stakeholders. So,
Mhm.
between now and when the legislature returns, presents a chance to reach out to your delegation members in your community and share which aspects of the budget proposals are favorable and which you would like to see changed. This is also a chance to advocate for more funding as well as changes to policies contained within the budget, such as the add on weights for FTE for advanced academic courses, something we have talked a lot about.
Absolutely. Delays in getting our final budget also poses challenges for our school districts, as we know that our school boards and superintendents are working right now to prepare for the 25-26 school year, and that we don't know how much money we're going to have. So districts are rightfully going to be cautious in their planning for next year, so that they don't have to then work backwards and end up having to make any unnecessary cuts. One thing that districts do at this time is look at the proposals that we have currently from both chambers. That can be a guide as to what we can expect from the budgets once they have their conferencing. So we know that we had pretty modest increases proposed by both chambers. The houses was at 0.7% increase and the Senate was at a 1.25% increase. So using that as a basis, one can obviously say I would not expect any more than 1.25%, and I would be more prudent to probably think about the 0.7% increase, just because you'd rather budget thinking that you're going to have less money, and if you get more, then that's just fantastic. It's a little gravy.
Worst case
That's
scenario is the best way to kind of think right now.
that's exactly right. And we don't know if they're going to continue with their proposals or if they'll come back with something different. It's more than likely that their starting place will be where they ended this session, what they had proposed, but anything can happen in the coming weeks.
They are certainly proving that this year for sure. So, with no work being done on the budget, there has been plenty of time this week for
Mhm.
policies to be
Yes.
passed. A number of bills that have passed this week for sure. Two of them were among priorities for FAFSA and a number of our education associations that are partners with FAFSA in some way. The first is around our school safety bill. So, Senate Bill 1470 passed both sides, is ready for the governor's signature. Among that includes that language on the school supervision hours and being 30 minutes before, 30 minutes after school for doors and gates to be locked.
Mhm.
Also included in there are establishing the sheriff to create or to support the school guardian program if a school board chooses to use security guards, add some requirements for the Office of Safe Schools to have a work group of specified entities, and continuing for the Department of Education to cooperate with DMS in a centralized system for all public safety answering points of infrastructure. So there are a number of things in this bill. Again, this was one of FASA's priorities that we have been talking about since January, February, before
Yes.
session even started. The second is around middle school and high school start times. Senate Bill 296 was officially passed also this week and made it to the finish line. What that will do is allow our school boards and charter schools to basically determine at the local level if they would like to make the change to middle school and high school start times. If they choose not to, they need to send a letter or a report to the Department of Education stating why they chose not to do that. We know most, if not all, school districts have been heavily researching what it would look like if they were forced to do it. And so, any points of interest of not moving forward with it would be applicable in those letters and reports.
Yep.
Not necessarily from our priority list, but other things that passed is House Bill 809, which relates to school social workers and deals with any provisions relating to persons being employed as a social worker that are exempt from specified educator certification requirements.
Mm.
So, opportunity for us to look at how we're requiring our social workers to be certified. Also, Senate Bill 1374 on school district reporting requirements. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Basically, anyone that is an instructional personnel, if they have been arrested, they need to self report within 48 hours. And there are a number of things that will happen
Mhm.
following that.
Mhm.
Last on my list to talk about too is relating to early learning, and that is Senate Bill 738 for childcare and early learning providers. It will exempt public and private preschools from specified special assessments that are levied by a municipality. So there are a few other things in there around revising licensing standards, for licensed childcare facilities, minimum standards and training requirements as well for personnel. So we encourage you to take a look at that, as we know a number of our elementary schools also have pre-K included.
Absolutely. And there are a number of bills that also look at the safety of students that passed during these last couple weeks. House Bill 597 looks at diabetes management in schools. This bill says that school districts can obtain and maintain a supply of your medication that would be needed if students are having a diabetic emergency. It also provides some protections in there for those and requirements about how you would both get it and then secure that type of medication. Senate Bill 1070, which is essentially EKGs for student athletes, requires the FHSAA to adopt bylaws that require all students to pass an EKG screening before they participate in certain activities. This bill, there is a chance in the budget that there was going to be some monies associated with this that would allow a group that provides these EKGs services to schools to pay for that so that school districts and or parents, students wouldn't have to pay for that themselves. So we'll have to see if that makes it in the budget. Obviously, we don't know since that's outstanding, but that was certainly discussed. And then lastly, Senate Bill 1514, anaphylaxis in public and charter schools, requires school boards and charter school boards that serve students kindergarten through 8 to have training about administering that anaphylaxis to students. And then there was one other bill that we were watching as a potential train because it had that title that was
Very
just
generic.
yes, just education, and you just say, "Who? What's going to be on here?" And sure enough, we ended up with kind of a mix. This wasn't a what we would consider a major train, but there are a number of provisions here. House Bill 443, education, provides that charter schools are public facilities for the purpose of concurrency. It allows charter school boards to adopt their own student code of conduct, which is interesting because we thought that's already law. So that was an interesting provision. It allows full time virtual students to participate in interscholastic athletic teams at a public school in which the area they reside. So there's kind of a whole number of things in that bill.
Yeah, and the media definitely has been paying attention to that 443 bill as
Yes.
well, especially around the student code of conduct.
Hmm.
It has been in the media, in the news significantly over the last week.
Absolutely.
I wanted to encourage all of our listeners and especially our FAFSA members to be on the lookout over the next couple of weeks for calls to action from FAFSA. So we talked at the beginning of the episode about how our legislators will be headed home, and this
Hmm.
is a great opportunity for you to reach out and just talk about what is actually going to happen
Hmm.
if certain legislation or budget restrictions go into place.
Hmm.
So your voice as a school leader and a district leader is significant, and
Yes.
it can make the difference for sure. And we've seen it over the years how our members have made a difference.
Yes.
We do anticipate working to have more discussion around the full funding for AP, IB, CAPE, etc.,
Mhm.
as well as an overall increase to at least what the Senate has proposed, to your
Yes.
point, Jessica, of reaching that 1.25% increase at a minimum.
Hmm.
We will also communicate certainly about any policies that may survive the evening and beyond. There's a if they choose not to sine die, like you said, they could continue.
They absolutely could. And then, of course, the work continues beyond the legislature as well. At the state level, the DOE continues to have a number of rules under development. In fact, I think it's around 24 at this point,
Yep.
and there are 9 development workshops that are scheduled. Three of the rules deal directly with safety reporting, monitoring, and threat management. One of the workshops relating to requirements for ESOL endorsement was moved to May 13th, so that's getting coming to us very quickly. At this time, only 2 rules have been scheduled for the June 4th State Board of Ed meeting. If you have availability to attend these workshops, please find the links in the FAFSA Advocacy Center under the State Board of Education section. And additionally, as of right now, so 3:30 on Friday, May 2nd, there are train bills that are still very much alive in the legislature. Some that contain teacher certification issues, some that contain the Senate's dereg
Mhm.
proposals. One of the education related rural renaissance language is also still in play. So there is very much to be done at the Capitol. Both chambers are returning from their recess, so we're going to head back there now and continue our advocacy.
Absolutely. And again, your engagement in this process is so incredibly important. If you are able to attend any of the workshops, please reach out to me, Michelle, or to Jeff Willoughby on our FAFSA staff so that we can support you in that role and so that we can hear some updates back from you. That is our update for this week. We hate that we had to rush it before
Yes.
the final moments, but production is in a process, and we're
Yes.
just so thankful for you all listening. Please share the FASA Leadership Lounge with your colleagues. Check out FASA.net, and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership Lounge podcast presented by the Florida Association of School Administrators. Today's podcast was hosted by Michelle White and Jessica Janasiewicz. The podcast is produced by Jeff Willoughby. Special thanks to musical director David Higgins. Make sure to subscribe to the Leadership Lounge podcast wherever you find your favorite podcasts. New episodes are released each Monday. For show topic suggestions, questions, or comments, please email communications@vasa.net. We hope you enjoyed the show.